as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's a stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle, thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Saturday. The weekend is finally here. Glad to have you with us. Live streaming on Rumble. Rumble.com/amradpod is where you find us. If you want to also watch us, if you want to be in the chat where it is live and lively as always fun to sign on early, see what you guys are talking about. You guys are talking about some squirrel or something today, but I don't know. Maybe we'll give it a chance to get into that a little bit today. But really, what we're going to be focusing on is the question of citizens or subjects. Also, a reminder, if you haven't already subscribed to the iTunes and Spotify and iHeart, do that so you get the updated show when we drop it on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. To the question at hand of citizens versus subjects, it was an idea that was percolating in my head while I was out there pounding the pavement early in the morning hours before the sun rises here in Florida, where it's still beautiful. It's gotten up into the mid 80s. Sorry for those of you who are not in the great free state of Florida. And I was thinking to myself while I was avoiding the homeless people and the fishermen, the United States is a pretty cool country. I mean, we have our problems, which we will get to, but it's based on a certain idea. The question, can man rule himself, or do we need a king? We have citizens in this country, or at least we're supposed to. Every other country before, they were subjugated. That's why they were called subjects. But what we're seeing is a growing trend now, and we're going to get to lots of examples of them, particularly around illegal aliens, just government wasting our money, and impeding on your ability to do what you want and say what you want and worship how you want. We're going to look into those, and question is, are we still a nation who can rule itself? Are we still a people who can, will, and want to rule ourselves? I don't know. I think it's a question that needs to be asked. And I'm glad that, at least for the time being, I have my friend Garrett O'Boyle at GOB Actual here. We were worried about the tech issues, Garrett. Are you here? Can you hear me? Proof of life.
I'm here, but things seem a little glitchy. How are we in the chat? Are you guys hearing me okay? Because it's kind of laggy. It's kind of jumpy. I don't know what the deal is. So hopefully we are firing on all cylinders. It seems okay. How's the reception on your end for me?
Reception is good here, but if we have you drop off, don't worry. I will not want for monologuing because we've got some good stuff to get to today. But before the gods of the tech strike you down and smite you, I do want to get you to talk about the first topic that we have, because it is a First Amendment issue, because it is it's a freedom of religion and freedom of ideology and expression type of issue. And I wanted to get you fired up right off the bat. So if we do lose you, we can blame it on the O'Boyle meter, maybe melting your cords there behind the screen, or just I don't know, Big Brother is getting in the way here. So, uh,
That's funny you say that. So when I made the thumbnail for this one, I was like, oh, what can I use for a prompt? And I veered away from Orwell and I went with Huxley, and I included in the prompt like Huxley's A Brave New World, and that's in part why the background image on the thumbnail is what it is, because Huxley and Orwell, they were men ahead of their peers.
Huxley won. He was right. Orwell,
Agreed.
I don't think I think he missed on the fact that we could just make people comfortable. But
Hmm.
let's talk about this one. This is a local station here. It's KENS 5. Distinct discrimination. Pro-life group says it was forced to halt meetings at Sotomayor High School. I wonder if it's named after Sonia Sotomayor.
Indeed.
So our individual here, his name is Diego. He's a senior at the school. He started a chapter of the Students for Life of America. It's a pro-life nonprofit club in school districts and colleges around the country. Nearly 20 people were interested in joining, and Diego says he attempted to establish a group early this spring. In August, the assistant superintendent for secondary administration, I guess that's high schools, sent Diego an email saying the staff would reach out and detail the club being established in the school year, this 2024-2025. So all things seem to be trending in the right direction. Quote from Diego: I started up an Instagram, and that Instagram had the Sotomayor Students for Life handle. Once that Instagram kind of got popular, kids started finding out about the club. Once the administration was made aware of the account, they said that because it had Sotomayor in the name, I couldn't change the name, but I had to delete it. So he had to delete the Instagram account entirely at that point where he'd built a followership. So that's a little bit of a sacrifice he'd have to make. He couldn't just amend the name. They didn't want the name Sotomayor because it's attached to the school in there. He said, I deleted the account in front of the assistant principal. That's how compliant I was. He thought that Students for Life was singled out, though, since several student groups use the school's name and logo on social media. The group finally did meet this school year one time. After the Instagram account was deleted, they called me into the office and said because the club was preventing education from moving forward and because it was creating an uproar in the school, they were temporarily suspending my club. We found out later that the principal was receiving emails from parents who were uber upset that there were students who wanted to not murder babies. For public
Yeah.
school, this is really the gist of it, because it's not a private institution. They can't claim that, we can do what we want. This is in fact a private or a public school that has granted this ability to him to have. And within that article itself, it talks about there are religious groups that do meet at the school. It's just this particular aspect that they seem to have a problem with.
That's right, because if you don't bow to the death cult, you can't have your liberty, you can't have your freedom. And it's interesting, Steve. I thought of Sonia Sotomayor earlier this week.
The dumbest member of the Supreme Court. Have you ever heard her arguments or read anything that she's written?
I sure have. I
Is
sure have.
Objectively, do you think she's literate to a 12th grade level?
If she is, it's just barely.
It's a
because-
Baltimore school.
yes. She graduated top of her class in Baltimore.
Class
But,
of one.
I thought of her earlier this week because of a bodily autonomy concern. And I think that's where this ultimately leads, right? Is baby murder, bodily autonomy. So you can take the Christian aspect out of it, or the religious aspect altogether, because it's not just Christianity that advocates for not murdering babies in the womb. It's all sorts of religions that do. But let's just remove that piece, because I love to point to this argument of Sonia Sotomayor. And you're probably aware of this case, Steve. It was Missouri versus McNeely. This is good Supreme Court case law for police officers, because it has to do with OWI stops or DUI or whatever they're called in your state, drunk driving. And in this case, in the oral argument, Sotomayor said, and I quote, because I have it here because I pulled it up because I thought about it earlier this week, and then, as if it was divinely ordained, you bring her to the fore today. But in this oral argument of this case, she said, and I quote, where is it here? Okay, she says, such an invasion of bodily integrity So she's talking about sticking a needle in somebody's arm to draw their blood, to do the blood alcohol content. So for those who don't know, if you get stopped for drunk driving, in most states you get your blood drawn and sent off to a lab, and then they determine how much alcohol is in your blood. And this is talking, basically this case is about the warrant requirement regarding that issue. So Fourth Amendment issue here. But she says in the argument, such an invasion of bodily integrity that it implicates an individual's most personal and deep-rooted expectations of privacy. And I love this argument that she makes, because when it comes to the government, so this case was in 2013. So go back in time a little bit. You have to. And she was arguing for the bodily autonomy aspect. But now when it comes to abortion, when it comes to vaccine mandates, people like Sonia Sotomayor, their logic dissipates and it evaporates. And, oh, your religious views and a public school and the baby murder.
She's unburdened by what has been. She's very flexible with her principles, so-called principles that she seems to have here. And you're right to hone in the fact that it's not necessarily a religious argument, because that is a sentiment that's shared across multiple faiths and sects within those faiths as they are. It's just a First Amendment issue, right? Because this is a public school. The guy is going along with all the demands of him, even if there is a little bit of a burden. And he was trying to be accommodating, saying, look, I'm not even going to tie the school to it. Provide me the space to meet, just like you're letting the LGBTQ rainbow kamikaze kids meet if they want here, because you have freedom of association. The law says Congress shall make no law abridging of freedom of the exercise of a free religion or requiring anything thereof. We're supposed to be a country of citizens, that we're in charge here. We pay the freight on that school, and there's going to be things going on there outside of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. There's going to be a social aspect to it, because that community, that school board has deemed that it's appropriate and nourishing and enriching for the kids to have those outside extracurricular activities, be they sports or social clubs. And in this case, talking about an issue here, or trying to push forward an actual policy nationwide, then you have the ability to do that. And the school can't impede on you for that. And the fact that they're going to lean on this, you can't use our TM, our school's identity. You're just frankly being inconsistent with that, because you are getting uncomfortable phone calls from parents, which ultimately comes down to, the citizenship question. Why are parents calling the school for that? It's to me the same thing as, like, your neighbors playing their music a little bit loud, so you knock on their door and ask them not to.
Mm-hmm.
You're just asking the government to be the jerk police. You might think that pro-life people are jerks, so I'm going to call the government on them, and you better take that down. Or you could come to the conclusion that the best way to confront bad speech is with your own speech, better speech, even though in this case, their speech is going to be much better than yours, because your message is, let's murder all the babies.
Yep. I mean, this goes right back to,
they know they're wrong. They know they're wrong. That's why they did that.
Yeah, of course they do. And that's just it. That's why they want the government to intercede on their behalf, because, oh, maybe I can convince the government that my argument is better, and then they will do the dirty work for me. And it goes right back to our Holocaust Memorial Museum trip. It goes right to the exhibit called Summer Neighbors. We did an episode on it, probably like back when we were in double digits, like a long time ago. And this is that. And it actually even goes to some of our protected disclosures. The one I think of specifically that both of us blew the whistle on was the parents at the school board's issue, because you got parents who are calling the government to intercede, to say, hey, I don't like this other person's speech. We talked about it not too long ago. The Middle Tennessee State First Amendment Center, we pulled up the article on Constitution Day or Constitution Week or whatever it was, about most Americans like the First Amendment until they realize that their neighbors have freedom of speech too.
No fun when the rabbit's got the gun.
Yeah.
All right. So off of that, though, and I sort of teased this at the beginning, that it's not just about First Amendment. There's elements here. It's all about the social compact, right? I always said the social compact completely shattered. It's agreement between you and your government. Let's go down to 5th grade civics. You agree to give up some of your liberty, and the government then owes you a duty. to defend your others, because we all kind of came to the agreement of like, well, if we don't have any government, then all of our liberties might be at risk because other people in another place are going to band together and come and take our liberties and take our stuff. So we're going to need a government to some extent here, but they are supposed to stand in the gap there. And one of their duties and responsibilities is to make sure that they defend our border against other people and obey the law that has been passed. And the policies like don't allow people with communicable diseases from nations that don't like us into the country. But that's long gone bye-bye here, as we learned from the New York Post. So this is from the Louisiana Attorney General is suing the Biden administration after Chinese migrant, thank you very much, New York Post, the Chinese illegal alien with rare, aggressive, and drug-resistant tuberculosis entered the United States. So
That sounds bad.
the Attorney General's name is Liz Muriel. She estimates that over 200 detainees and untold numbers of non-detainees may have been exposed to tuberculosis as a TB-infected migrant was flown by ICE from California to Louisiana. So we have Immigrations and Customs Enforcement flying illegal aliens from California to Louisiana, thousands of miles, and then shuttling them between a detention center and processing facility. The Chinese migrant, a woman whose name is redacted because we have to protect her identity, even though she's an illegal alien. She illegally crossed the U.S.-Mexico border because China is bordering on Mexico in April and was apprehended by federal authorities in California. The woman was given a TB skin test upon arrival at Richwood, which tested, quote, highly positive on July 23rd. Is there like a low positive TB result? I don't know. Is it mega Doppler positive? But despite apparently having the contagious disease, 3 days later, ICE moved her to Louisiana to a processing center in Basile, where she was placed in general pop.
It's
Are we going to redo 2020 all over again, or is it too late for that?
we're gonna redo it.
Is this
We're
a
gonna
mass
redo it.
spreader event?
And you know why, Steve? Because it comes from China. And since I can't do the Donald Trump, I'm just gonna play it right here.
Why do you keep using this? A lot
Because
of
it
people
comes
say
from
it's
China.
racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
See, that's what we're after here, Steve. We're just after accuracy because the tuberculosis comes from China. Okay?
That's what the media loves to do. They just say, well, if you say something that is against China, you must be xenophobic.
You must be.
If you say something about protecting the borders, you must be racist. You just need to say, like, you're stupid. It comes from China, and we should defend the borders. But the social compact here, there's actually, I went and found it. This comes from the CDC, which we'd have no respect for at this point, but they do have an existing website. It says applicants are inadmissible to the United States if they are determined to have a communicable disease of public health significance. Is tuberculosis something that is of public interest?
I think so.
Particularly,
it is
highly positive.
Yeah.
Didn't we have stories of like these really? We were secluding the tuberculosis patients, coordinating them off, and then you'd have these heroic nurses that would go and basically put their lives at risk. I think that's the way Andrew Jackson's mother died. That left him orphaned because she went to go and be a do-gooder and help people who had tuberculosis, who had been sequestered and cordoned off.
It was back when Americans had a lot less fear than they do now. Not that I want tuberculosis spreading, but this is what's interesting. You mentioned the social compact. We already have these rules and these laws, and our own government is just like, whatever, you're a racist and a bigot. And
because they've subjugated us at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They don't view us as citizens in a deal. I mean, you had Donald Trump up there, the art of the deal, right? Where we've come to a handshake agreement. We didn't actually come to a handshake agreement. We put it down on a contract, right? We had a lot of people sign off on a declaration, and then others develop and craft a constitution that's supposed to be the contract with America that we have because we're citizens. We're really in charge. That's because everybody's getting geeked up about a presidential election. Who's going to run the country? Us, as always. But I think there's a mindset creep that's happened that everybody says, well, we are electing a king. We're all really subjects here, and we've given too much power here, and it's in the hands of some people who do not view their responsibilities to be stewards of the contract that exists, but instead to just get as much power as they can and push the policies that they want, and damn the consequences, regardless of whether or not the people want it or not. They've installed us, and as a result, we have the power. And it's impeding on even things like the pursuit of happiness. We'll say, and I don't think I'm stretching too far with you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which basically means property, which means you get to do what you want as long as you're not violating other people's rights. As long as you're not hurting other people, you can do what you want as a citizen of the country. And that includes starting a business, selling a product that people want, need, and desire at a price that you darn well think is fair. And if they don't think that's fair, you will be out of business. If they do, then you'll probably thrive. So what business is it of the frickin' government comes from NBC News? Senator Elizabeth Warren and Rep. Madeline
Pocahontas.
Dean demand food and beverage CEOs put a stop to shrinkflation. So
What
Elizabeth
exactly
Warren
is
can't
shrinkflation?
wait to talk about shrinkflation, where they basically charge the exact same amount, even though the package is smaller. Newsflash: by doing that, they actually keep the inflation numbers down because people still buy one bag of chips. They just get less chips, but inflation doesn't rise statistically. So they're actually doing you a solid, Senator Warren. But in a letter, Warren from Massachusetts, Madeline Dean from Pennsylvania accused General Mills, Coca-Cola, and PepsiCo of engaging in a pattern of profiteering through shrinkflation. Shrinking the size of a product in order to gouge consumers on the price per ounce is not innovation. It's exploitation.
No,
Warren
it's
and
not.
Dean,
Oh
do
gosh.
they have a gun to your head and tell you when
Yeah.
you buy your Doritos?
Don't buy the Pepsi.
Warren and Dean accused companies of funding lobbying for Republican-led corporate tax breaks in 2017 that promised a trickle-down effect, but instead incentivized price gouging because corporations raised prices to pad their profits, knowing that lower tax cuts meant that they would get more back on each dollar of price increase. So they're saying you lobbied for tax cuts, because you didn't want to pay a lot of taxes and simultaneously raise your prices. So you got even more profit. You're not entitled to that profit.
How dare you?
Ex-
How dare
excuse
you?
me?
Okay,
How
this is
dare you sell Doritos that people want, need, and desire? We recently found out that Garrett, not a fan of the Cool Ranch. He likes the flaming ones, right?
I
Red.
do. I like the flaming hot. I like the spicy nacho. If I could only pick one, Steve, it would be the spicy nacho for sure. But this topic is there's a couple prongs that are important here. One, it's almost as if these businesses know what they're doing in a time of economic is despair too strong of a word? I don't know. If it is, we're
Malaise.
close.
Well, we did only find out that before they revised them down, that 12,000 jobs were created last month.
Oh yes, I saw that. And
Only
what they
12
say?
Without
They-
government jobs, it's negative.
Oh, it's negative. Nobody's shocked here. Nobody paying attention. I did think it was awfully low because they said, "Well, we're going to have 100,000 or whatever they claimed." But back to General Mills and Pepsi and whoever else, like they are adjusting as the market adjusts. They need to adjust. I mean, this is like econ 101 stuff here. And then what happens? Oh, the government, Steve, the government always tries to interfere and get in the way. And in this case, again, it's the government saying, we're here for your good. Trust us. And Pocahontas doesn't know what she's talking about. And she's just going to author a letter and send it off and paint the big corporation as the bad guy. Meanwhile, the people buying the freaking chips and the Pepsis are going to still buy them. They're just going to get less, and they're going to complain.
Not for nothing.
About
Not for nothing. By reducing taxes on businesses, businesses don't pay taxes. They just build the taxes into the price of whatever their good or service is. They'll just raise the price, whatever it is that the tax increase was. So by lowering taxes, it allowed them to reduce the prices of goods.
Again, it's almost as if they know a thing or two about running a business and economics.
Yeah,
And
I think Elizabeth Warren knows much about that.
No,
She's been in
no.
academia. Well, and Liz Warren is great because she comes up with regulations and then has her family members start businesses that help businesses navigate those regulations.
It's
Nothing
good work if you
nefarious
can
there.
get it. Yeah, Good grief. The government, Steve. I tell you what.
So I want to kind of marry though the two ideas of the government and with immigration with almost the idea of the corrupt business. And this is not really a named. Well, there actually is one named business here, and this does to me it is an example of corrupt business. It's more of a relationship between them, and it is again back to the question of you would only see this if the government doesn't view the people as citizens. They would have to view the population as subjects, just chattel for whatever we want to do, whatever we want to achieve. And we're going to make deals with our allies, reward our friends, punish our enemies. And all of that is in this story. And it's a longer form story. And it comes from the City Journal. And I believe it's who writes this one? It's it's Chris Rufo, who's done some really good reporting. So I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm going to say Charleroi, Pennsylvania.
That sounds right.
They're grappling with a surge of Haitians. This is another Springfield type of example. So the population had declined. It's kind of a dying city in Pennsylvania. And the census recently said that there were 4,000 people living in Charleroi. Then suddenly things changed. They estimate approximately 2,000 Haitians moved in, 50% of the population. So they went from 4 to 6,000.
That's not going to bode well for municipal government.
The infrastructure itself, like schools and the roads and the hospital, none of that is taken into calculation. But they dumped 2,000 Haitians in Charleroi. The town was struggling with high rates of poverty and unemployment already, and they've been forced to assimilate thousands of new arrivals. The schools, very clearly, crowded with new Haitians, and they had to hire translators because they don't speak English in this little town. They had to hire Haitian translators. Some of the old pipes downtown have started releasing sewage because of extra people using the potty. And there is a growing sense of trepidation about the alarming number of car crashes because vehicles are now hitting buildings. Wonder why. The best way to understand the migrant crisis is to follow the flow of the people, the money, and the power. And that's what Chris Rufo did here. So he sets a pretty good chain here that I think it's all encompassing, and it's only possible when your government is not viewing this social compact as being in effect. It is now moot. It's null and void. You're a subject, and we don't care about you, or this deal that we allegedly have to uphold, which they have no intention of doing. So the first is the federal government. They're allowing and facilitating hundreds of thousands of Haitians coming into the country through the CHNV parole program, which is supposed to be used sparingly. And they're bringing in like is Haiti like 6% of Haiti is now in America under the Biden administration?
That sounds about right. I saw that stat like that this week, and it's like that's a massive percentage of any country.
We went to school, Garrett, right? Like if you went to school and every classroom like lost a kid, like that's weird. Like every one kid in every class they all moved away the same day. The school climate would have been completely changed, right? Yeah. That's what that is. 6%. It's basically a little bit more than 1 in 20, right?
So, dude, that's insane. So I just looked this up. The population of Haiti in 2020 was 11.3 million people. I don't know. I'm not as good at math as you, but 6% of that is a freaking lot of people.
It's like 700,000.
That's not a small number for any place.
700,000 people, I would say, is the city of Des Moines, Iowa, the capital.
That's a lot. 700,000. I want to say Milwaukee is roughly that. Maybe not the metro area.
The inner. I believe like St. Louis is still like 500,000 people proper, but I mean, you have the outstanding areas like the suburban. But that's a significant Midwest city outside of like Chicago.
Yeah.
So after
it's more. Milwaukee is not even 600,000, and
there you go.
I mean, Milwaukee. It's honestly, it's a nice enough city, other than the more seedy parts, but it's not small. By no means is it small, and we're talking about another 125,000 people on top of that. That's insane.
So after the federal failure or purposeful bringing in 700,000 Haitians and paroling them in. The next link, according to this piece from Chris Rufo at the City Journal, is a network of publicly funded NGOs. Those are non-government organizations. They basically take government dollars, do what the government wants done, but they can't do because it would be illegal or not politically palatable. So they just outsource the dirty work to these NGOs who purport to be, we're nonprofit, we're out there just helping people. That's not what goes on. They're just the hatchet men. So they provide the Haitians with resources to assist. They travel, like they drive them straight to this Charleroi city, housing, income, and work. In the struggling city that's dealing with poverty, they're giving them jobs. These groups are called National Resettlement Agencies, and they've received $5.5 billion since 2021. Your money. The next in the chain is the business. So this town has become basically a company town through this local food company called 4th Street Foods, where they are laying off the locals and hiring the Haitians because they'll work for less money. So, and then the final one is through the business is housing, and this is where it becomes a company town. So the owner of the 4th Street Foods companies, he basically during coronavirus bought up a whole bunch of properties for people to live in, and now he's evicting them and allowing Haitians to live in like 20 deep in these houses.
Dude,
Feds to local, top to bottom. That it's only done if you're not viewing your people, as the bosses in this situation. They're an inconvenience.
Yep. Just
I'm
get out of our way.
I'm going to fund a backdoor channel NGOs to bring in illegal aliens that will then assist this local business here. The local business, I'm sure, is making some nice donations to political coffers, and he'll get cheaper labor. And then at the same time, he will put people out of their houses that he's bought because he can fill those houses with more people and they'll work for less money. And then basically they're slave labor at that point because they're tied as well. Those Haitians are victims, even though they're not as big a concern to me as the people who already lived in the town. That's what's going on from top to bottom. It's public-private partnerships that are rejiggering the social compact that we currently have.
Yeah. You know what I love about this too is the government they'll come at you and say that you're the bigot and you're the racist and they're helping these poor Haitians when in reality it's just like a modern form of slavery. When I was in Kansas, especially out in western Kansas, there's like meat packing plants and whatnot, and heavy Somali population out there. And it's because it's cheap labor. And it's like, wait a second. Especially the people on the left, they're gonna, well, I'll read it. I got it right here. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside.
Can I just say something about the Statue of Liberty poem? I don't give a damn what that stupid poem says. That's not the law.
Right. And for most of our history, okay, the sentiment of that, sure, great, and it's a poem and whatever. Okay. I like the idea behind it, but as anybody in a functioning society, go ahead, send me your poor. If they're going to come here and work hard, if they're going to come here and follow the laws, if they're going to come here and assimilate, if they're going to come here and learn the language so that we don't need to hire a translator. I mean,
if they're coming and accepting the social compact that we've all bought into, and they realize that if they do come here, they have to be citizens, not subjects waiting on the daddy government to hand them things out of their, the fact that they're some sort of despot, but they're a benevolent despot for you as long as you vote for me. No, you actually have to be a citizen, and citizen, it requires work. You have to be engaged. And that's really, kind of giving away the end here. The fact that we've lost the fact that we are citizens are now subjects is a lot of us to blame because people are lazy. It's just easier to just tell me what to do. Tell me to put a mask on my face or not to put a mask on my face. Tell me how often I need to inject something into my arm. Tell me if my kids can go to school. Tell me if I'm allowed to open my business. It's just easier to give that away.
Yep. Yep, it's the willing, as much as it is the actual tyranny of government, it's the willing subjugation of, quite frankly, the masses.
Mhm. All right. How about make America healthy again? Which I think there's actually a pretty good opportunity for there to be a cross pollination of the political spectrum on this one because you have the granola eating hippie on the left, right? And then the newfound focus on, well, maybe we're getting sick and we were more vulnerable to China because we have been eating right and getting outside and getting sunlight, right? And we've been just believing these experts at the government because tell us what to do. We're just your subjects. And I saw this one, and this is going to fire you up too because you seem like the kind of guy who likes to eat meat, right?
I sure do. I love me some meat.
Well, get ready to say goodbye
Oh
because
boy.
according to the Washington Examiner, Biden Harris diet panel to elevate plant proteins over
Oh
meat.
goodness gracious,
They're-
Steve. I mean, they just want us to die. They want us to die, and they want us to be subjugated and enslaved until we do. And they want us to go out like slow and horribly. Dude, the plant protein stuff.
They want us to be looking
Ugh.
like Wally. They want us to all be soy boys. Dietary Health Committee from the Biden Harris administration is poised to issue guidelines for the subjects to follow for people in the United States, recommending that plant-based proteins supplant animal-based proteins, like entirely replacing them. Replace beef, chicken, and eggs. The recommendations from the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, which are reevaluated every 5 years, are slated to arrive by the end of the year after the election. So they're not going to own these during the election because it's going to piss off a bunch of people. Just people who are not that involved, but like, damn it, I want my steak. I'm going out and going to vote against that, right? They're going to do it stealthily, but it's also a punishment of the rural America, which is trending against the Biden and Harris administration. And then we're going to go off the guidelines that have ultimately, I mean, I think you can tie a lot of the problems we have to that stupid food pyramid that we had to learn when you and I were
Oh,
in grade
dude,
school.
100%, 100%. You got grains. You got
Am I a horse that eats oats?
no, and that's the pillar. That was the pillar. Rice and bread and
The
oh man,
foundation of a healthy diet is lots of cereal.
yeah. And it was where'd it come from, Steve? Where'd it come from? The freaking government again. But you know what? Because I do want to just rant and rave and scream. But first, some levity, Steve. Some levity. If you're only listening, if you're only listening, you're missing out on the penis-shaped vegan sausages that became an instant social media smash, according to the headline and the staff writers at wherever I pulled this up from. But it's an image of Beyond Meat, the Beyond sausage, and maybe I should have said earmuffs sooner for the children who are around. But
Isn't
we
that a
also get
Bill
a movie
Gates
reference there.
company?
It's I think so, and quite frankly, that probably is pretty accurate for Bill Gates. But to describe what you're missing out on if you're not watching, it essentially is a limp, flaccid, fake bratwurst, and yeah, it looks about like you'd imagine Bill Gates's bottom half to look like, and
The
this
Bill
is
Gates unit.
that's what we have to rename the Beyond Sausage, the Bill Gates unit,
Yes,
and
the BGU.
you know, it's to tie in the food pyramid, to tie in meat, to tie in all the ingredients in the Beyond Meat. Like, it doesn't take a scientist, it doesn't take a doctor to understand like what is healthy and what isn't. Like
But it's
it's
the
it's just
compulsory fashion that is going to be pushed down because we talked about before. It's 30 million kids are on the school lunch program. They're not going to have
dude.
meat anymore.
Thanks to Big Mike for that, Michelle Obama for bringing the school lunch programs. And again, Steve, it's the willing subjugation. I think I've talked about this before in Kansas COVID era. The government schools, their school lunch program remained open, and even other homeschool families. And also, by the way, they were families who didn't even need the food, and they would kind of pick through it and rummage through it and throw the rest away. And it's like you're perpetuating the problem when you're accepting the freaking breadcrumbs from Caesar. Reject Caesar.
That's what citizenship requires of people. But it's just so much easier to tell me what to eat and I'll eat that, master government. And the government is very happy for that. I'm sure that they actually resent being bothered to tell you to eat at all. And they want to pass guidelines that are going to make it easier for them to feed the masses. And they're going to say, look, my magnanimous benevolence, I'm allowing you to eat the soy turkey.
Oh, yeah, and it's all factory farmed and factory made and factory processed. But don't worry, we're from the government and we're telling you it's healthy. Dude, it's awful, man. It's awful. And then look at the coordinated attack on it too. Like, the greenhouse gases caused by cow flatulation, for instance, and they say, oh, we got to tax meat, we got to tax ranchers even more because they're damaging society and they're damaging the earth. No, they're not. It's natural. It's part of God's creation for cows to flatulate and to poop. And you know what? They taste good. Add a little salt, man, some flame, some salt, and some butchered cow. You can't go wrong, Steve.
Well, you do if the government wants you to eat the soy turkey. But
Yeah, they want you to eat
the
Bill
BGUs.
Gates' unit.
All right. I need to take some umbrage with this one from the New York Post because we're back to the illegals. And this is sort of in our lane of criminality, where I was reliably assured that only the best are coming here, right? Which doesn't make any sense because if they were only the best, they should probably stay back at their own countries and make their countries like not be bleep hole countries. But we're getting only the best. They actually commit crimes at far less rates than Americans do, even though if that were true and they commit one crime on top of the breaking into our country illegally, then we've effectively imported more crime, even if it's just one crime. And even before I get there, because I was kind of fired up the last, say, 12 hours and people were getting very, very upset about some squirrel in New York City. It's taken the internet by storm, and people care more about Harambe the gorilla and Cecil the lion and Peanut the squirrel. Okay. Shut up and talk about Laken Riley. This is my opinion on Peanut the squirrel.
Doctor, is the squirrel going to live?
There's been massive trauma. We could, of course, try to save him, but it would be costly, difficult, and we'd have to send away for some special, really tiny instruments.
Well, are there any other options?
We could put him to sleep.
What might that cost?
Well, it's by the pound, so about 80 cents.
Well, it's just...
I'm Costanza. I'm on Team Costanza. Okay.
I love it. Yep.
All right. But this is the story I want to get to because this is in my neck of the woods. We had the hurricane coming through. This is on the Gulf side, but reporting from the New York Post, almost all heartless looting suspects, 41 of 45 arrested in Florida County after hurricanes are illegal migrants, says the sheriff. This is Pinellas County near the Tampa area.
Insane.
Oh, it's not even touching on it, right? So Pinellas County said that 41 out of 45 of the looters rounded up on armed robbery, burglary, loitering, grand theft, vandalism, and trespassing on their turf in the wake of the Milton and Helene. They were in the U.S. illegally. They weren't parolees. They weren't asylum seekers. They were illegal aliens.
Straight up here illegal. But Steve.
Oh no.
It's the huddled masses, my friend. They just want to breathe free. Don't you know?
And then on top of that, 196 people were caught in the area under suspicious circumstances, questioned, but had to be released because there was not enough probable cause. And of those, 163 were illegals, and they let 163 of them go.
Oh my gosh.
So we have 204 out of 241 are illegal aliens.
Dude, that is insane.
We've been let down at the border. We've been let down in the aftermath of a hurricane. Basic law enforcement won't do its job there. They just let these illegals who were suspected of committing additional crimes on people who you're duty bound to protect against fraud and force from your position in the government. if you in fact view it as an existing social compact. It's not just a government job so you can line your pockets and attain power and then punish your enemies. But we're in a post-social compact now.
You know,
It's an
Steve,
anti-social compact.
yes, definitely anti-social compact. It's crazy, and it reminds me of my youth a little bit of when I was a lot younger than I am. And speaking of Costanza, I must have a Costanza wallet because my lower left back is just killing me. I don't know why, and it's been hindering me for a while now. But anyways, when I was younger, I would listen to some talk radio, you know, and probably most people would be like, dude, you're like 17. Why do you listen to talk radio? But hey, I'll blame my dad for that because whenever we were in the car, he had some local talk radio on. Usually, Mark Belling for those of you in the Milwaukee area. But Michael Savage, you probably have heard of Michael Savage. He's used to say, maybe he still does. I don't know. I don't really listen to Savage anymore. Maybe you know what? I might have to go through the annals and see what he's up to these days. But he used to say borders, language, culture. That was like his tagline. And I'm thinking like 20 years ago he was saying that, and he was right. And look at where it's led now. Borders, language, culture. I mean, a lot of the topics today revolve around those things. And part of the culture, I would say, is a being a law abiding nation, or being a nation that has laws that we used to enforce. And now, even in a place like Florida, the free state of Florida, the law enforcement, they're arresting these guys and then they're letting them go. And they're not just breaking, you know, local or state laws of robbery or theft or what vandalism, burglary, you name it. They're already here violating federal law. But hey, we can't deport them because, you know, they're we didn't you read the inscription on the Statue of Liberty? We have to be open to everybody. And you know, what's a few people breaking the law to stop us from being free? Give me a
I mean,
break.
like you said, I was a math guy. Just let's put the Wonder Woman lasso of truth around some of these communists because they just don't care about the country. They don't care about the people. They view us as subjects who should be subjugated. Actually, they wish there was not a Second Amendment so they could blast us in the face. How many is the number? Like, just tell me what's the number because I'm a xenophobe, as I've been reliably informed. Even though that's nothing but scar tissue and callus, I don't care. Call me whatever you want.
I know.
So what's the number? So let's just give you a couple numbers. Do you want do you want to bring in 70 million illegal aliens? 70 million. You would never lose another election. Is that enough? Is 70 million enough? Huh. Okay. Oh, let's just say that they're a moderate communist. 70 million is enough. Okay. That's 1% of the rest of the planet.
Hmm.
How are you going to deal with the other 99%, you bigot xenophobe?
Yeah.
How
And
do
that's
you leave
just it.
them behind?
Right. That's just it. It's on if you use their way of thinking, if you use their logic, everybody becomes a racist and a bigot at some point.
And they all need walls.
Yeah. And like, dude, it really shows the lack of critical thought that but of course, because people don't want to critically think. It goes to citizens or subjects. It goes to the willful subjugation. It goes to Huxley's Soma. Isn't that's the drug in
That
that
was the
book, right?
drug,
Soma.
yes. They actually have a
And
drug now called Soma, which is
which
terrifying.
yes. And if you haven't read A Brave New World, and if you're not up to date on the modern drug Soma, it
Isn't it an
seriously is the stuff.
antidepressant?
I think it is, yeah. And it's like, did the drug maker like do that intentionally, or is this one of those
100%.
satanic cult things where they're like, "Hey, we have to tell you the truth, but we're just going to slip it in here."
Oh, no, I'm waiting
And
on the BGU sausages to turn into Soylent Green.
um, you know, Steve, that you're a pro. You're a pro at this because what do they call that in the industry? They call that a callback or something along those lines. There it is. There's the BGUs. If you're watching, you see it. The limp, flaccid Bill Gates unit
If you're
on
watching,
this,
we're sorry.
but not too sorry. Um, but it it goes to emotion. It doesn't go to critical thought. And I guess if we're talking borders, language, culture, That's part of the deal. That's the culture we're in now. And I don't know. I guess if you're listening to us, you're probably on the side of we need to change the culture. And quite frankly, the culture war we've been losing apparently for decades and decades. When here I am, I thought we were, we're doing it right and we're fighting the good fight and it's like, well, dude, we really need to step it up.
Well, it's border, language, culture, and spending. I would amend that, which is probably appropriate. Things I have this from the Daily Signal with a nice picture of the good senator, soon to be retired from Utah, junior
Mm.
Senator Mitt Romney. Hot dogs are his favorite meat.
Hot dog's his
I would
favorite
bet you
meat.
the BGU is rapidly approaching the top of the charts in Mitt Romney's world with a nice Ukraine lapel pin because he's a
Oh
globalist.
gosh.
So he's just the picture here, but the piece is called America's Bipartisan Spending Suicide Pact. And again, to the title of the show, Citizens or Subjects. This wouldn't happen if we had activated citizens who were holding these people accountable. And it wouldn't happen if the people that were in these positions did not view us as people who were their subjects because they are royal and elite and they hate the country and they hate the people who comprise the country. So, in a recent Gallup poll, 9 in 10 young women support socialized medicine, paired with higher taxes on the wealthy. So, we're going to tax the rich, soak the rich, because that's what we do. Now, if we flatten federal taxes and compelled everyone to pay their fair share, 9 in 10 young women would be hoisting a Gadsden flag. Which is a nice touch. All right. But in 1970, safety net funding welfare accounted for significant income if fewer than 1% of all counties in the country. 1% of all the counties were basically all like the Pennsylvania city that I was talking about before. Okay. That's 1970, about 55 years ago. But by 2000, it was 10%. Today, more than half of all U.S. counties drew at least a quarter of their income from the government aid from welfare. We're completely addicted to
Dude.
welfare, and they did it
Seriously.
like Soma to us.
Yep.
Right now, there's 42 million people on food stamps.
42 million. Dude. It's so I'm gonna jump a little early because the timing couldn't be better. Usually when I come up with our biblical aspect of the day, sometimes like if you tell me, the title and a couple ideas you had, I only come up with it ahead of time, but oftentimes I kind of think of something during the show. And that's what has happened today. And this last piece, I think, just drives this point home even more. And for those, well, I'll just put it up here. It's in most of the Gospels. This piece, and I'm pulling it from Mark chapter 12. It's elsewhere, Matthew and Luke, and maybe John too. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look. But the artificial title is paying taxes to Caesar. And starting in verse 13, it says, "And they sent to him some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians to trap him in his talk." So they're talking about Jesus here, because just before this, it was clear that they wanted to arrest and or kill Christ, and so they're kind of hatching their plot even more. And it says, "And they came and said to him, 'Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not?' But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, 'Why put me to the test? Bring me a denarius and let me look at it.' And they brought one. And he said to them, 'Whose likeness and inscription is this?' They said to him, 'Caesar's.' Jesus said to them, 'Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's.' And they marveled at him." And the reason this came to mind for me, and it really is driven home by this last piece, is 42 million Americans are on government assistance. That is not America. That is not what makes America great again. That is not what makes America able to take in your poor and your needy and your homeless, to hopefully give them a rebound and a chance at the once was the American dream. And this whole, especially for people of the faith out there, this idea of rendering to Caesar what is Caesar's, it often gets taken way out of context. But the piece that you need to take from it is, don't just take from Caesar. That's not what Caesar's um, role in your life should be. Yet we're at this point, like Steve said, where we've become addicted to it, like Soma. And I know so many people too who it's par for the course. Oh, if you can get on food stamps, you do because you can. Or if you can take the school's lunches, you do because you can. And it's often justified. Well, I render to Caesar. I pay my taxes, so I got to get my little piece. No, no, no. Resist that, and only give Caesar what is necessary. And don't take any extra from Caesar, and don't let Caesar run your life. That is the whole point. Is Oh, dude, it's so frustrating to me, man. And all of these topics really are bringing it home, where we have lost our way as a nation. We have bent the knee to Caesar. As we're talking about Caesar here, in Roman territory, it was a crime. It was a crime to have any god but Caesar. Caesar was God. And you would say Kaiser Kyrios. Caesar is king. And if you said Christos Kyrios, for instance, Christ is king, you could be put to death for that. And we are at this point. We are at this point in our nation where we are saying Kaiser Kyrios, Caesar is king. And we have got to fix our thinking on this. I don't even know if I'm doing an adequate job of trying to explain it and even sway people. Hopefully most people listening or watching are already swayed to only render to Caesar the bare necessities. But man, it has gotten way out of hand. That's insane. 42 million people.
If you're a citizen who realizes the actual hierarchy that you're supposed to be at the top of the pyramid, it's your responsibility to do things because you're taking on responsibilities as a citizen. You have to be inconvenienced. You have to be more activated than just sitting back and waiting on Caesar to tell you what is good for you. You would not accept that welfare just philosophically, even outside of a biblical context, right? That's my money. So I'm waiting on Caesar to give me some of my money back. No, I pay and render what is Caesar's because we have to have a functioning government. It does take resources. We all have to put a little bit into the kitty in order to make that happen. Not opposed to doing that if, in fact, the government knows its role. It shuts its hole and knows its role. And its role is not telling me what food I have to eat, and not telling me that I'm not allowed to have meetings in a public area. It's not telling me that we don't like that you've set your prices. It's everything it's not telling me that I have to allow 700,000 people that come from the worst country in the Western Hemisphere into our nation unvetted so that they can work jobs and take homes away from my fellow countrymen who are my fellow citizens. But we've completely flipped it on its head and we've gotten addicted to the Soma. We said, look, I'll take a little bit, I'll take just a hit of that Soma, a little bit of that comfort, and the comfort being, one, somebody telling me what to do at all times, and two, welfare, giving me back my own money and making me say thank you for it. May I have another?
Yes, yes. Please, sir, can I have another? It government's sole the primary aspect of government is to punish evil. And I know we beat this horse a lot here. Our government has betrayed that divine ordinance. That is the primary focus of government, is to punish evil and reward good. Our government no longer does either of those. It has completely flipped it on its head. And I'm with you, Steve. I'm fine rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's when Caesar is doing what they're supposed to do. But instead, maybe you saw this on X, if you follow me there, GOB actual shameless plug. But an FBI insider this week told me that the FBI dropped the bomb on them earlier in the week and said they had to have this completed by yesterday. The whole workforce had to include a DEI aspect into their performance plan. If you aren't familiar with the FBI and how it works, every year you're supposed to it's basically like it's like a self plan that you fill out, and it's got a, you put a couple, goals or deadlines or training things you want to do, or different aspects of what you want to do with your career into this performance plan. And then you seek to accomplish those things throughout the year. Well, now the FBI is mandating that you have some type of DEI aspect to that. Like what? I'm a white guy, so I need to go to like African Heritage Month and do some type of training. I don't know. There's all sorts of different options it could be, but they're mandating that you do it under threat of what? Some type of punishment. And if that is not the focal point of what a government is supposed to be doing, of what Caesar is supposed to be doing for you.
All right, I have 2 palate cleanses today because it's a Saturday, and they're both going to make you smile. One of them, I don't know, because I'm an ideologue in such a way that I was kind of like, yeah, it's heartwarming, but I don't know how the government should be involved in that, but it's still heartwarming nonetheless. All right, enough teasing it. Let's get to it. The first palate cleanse is the best pregnancy reveal ever.
I gotta be honest, the reason why I stopped you is because you got a child in the car with no child seat. I don't have a child. Are you sure? Are you positive about this? Are you saying I goofed? I don't see one.
When you do have a child in the car with no car seat.
I think that means you're a daddy, buddy.
Awesome. This is awesome.
Open. What's he saying?
Dad, see you on your birthday.
All right, so I think I can overlook the fact that is actually an arrest going on, that they use government resources to do that. I mean, that's when the government, she asked the government to do that, right?
Yeah.
I've done that. I've asked them to come by on my son's birthday and flash the blues, and they did that because that's part of the public outreach that they do. A despotic government doesn't do that at all, right? They would just say, you're another target that I can write a ticket on, and how dare you bother me? So a little heartwarming. And the second one, because you don't celebrate Halloween in the O'Boyle household, but I found this, and this is spot on for all dads out there. These are the dumb dads, they call themselves, and they do dad press conferences. This would be a post-Halloween press conference in the sports fashion.
Any major takeaways from trick-or-treating?
It was like the child's version of the Purge out there. I mean, just lawlessness.
You got some pushback on the jacket call.
Well, look, I didn't like wearing a jacket when I was a kid either. You know, it was like, how am I supposed to take out my cool Leonardo swords when I got a pullover starter jacket on? But the bottom line is, you just take the jacket, get the complaints over with up front, because if you don't take the jacket, they're just going to whine about being cold the rest of the evening.
If you walk us through calling the timeout right before you left the house.
Yeah, we had a family meeting beforehand. You know, make sure you don't eat too much candy. Thank every house after you get candy, and to stay where I can see them.
And was that received?
Well, I must have accidentally told that speech to 2 different children in the exact same costumes, because it was news to them come game time.
Couldn't you have just carried the jacket until they got cold?
Yeah. Yeah, they should have given it to me. Why not? I'm the pack mule, right? I'm out there dressed like a dog, felt like an ass.
What adjustments would you make for next year's trick-or-treating?
I mean, there's no use in looking at the past. You know, we're just focused on finishing the year strong, and we're just focused on finishing the year.
Well, we got another big family get-together in November, so if we can make it through that, I think we might be prepared for the family playoffs, which is the Christmas season.
I like it.
You didn't have to deal with it. Mine are old enough that we weren't dealing with it too much, but that's definitely the sentiment I feel for those guys, especially the one who was wearing the dog costume.
I do want to harken back to the first palate cleanse. Do you think that pregnancy test is like that tuberculosis story we did? Like, is it maybe?
Is it Mega Doppler?
No? Yeah.
It reminds me of our first pregnancy test that was positive. She took it so early, I was like, I need a microscope. Like, are you sure?
Is there a line there?
All right. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, as always, for joining the American Radicals podcast. If you haven't already, smash the like button and give us a follow. And we'll be back with you Tuesday, 0830 here on Rumble, rumble.com/amradpod. Until then, have a fantastic weekend, guys.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.